All right. All right. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 prakim Rambam, Hilchos, Ma'aser Sheni, the Neta Avoy, the final chapter, the 11th chapter, and we're going to start Hilchos Bikurim im Shar Matnas Kohuna Shabagvulim, and we will be learning both prakim Aleph and Beis, beginning with, again, the final chapter of Ma'aser Sheni and Neta Avoy, Perek Yud Aleph. We're going to be learning about the mitzvah of Vidui Ma'aser, as is explicitly written about in the parsha of Kisavai. We're going to learn that Bidi Eved, you can be Yoitza, the mitzvah of articulating what the Torah calls Vidui Ma'aser anywhere, even though ideally it should be said in a holy place, which means that even when there is no Beis HaMikdash, the Chiyuv is also going to be here. We're going to learn that the main mitzvah of Vidui is connected to Bikurim and to Ma'aser Sheni and many details. Chavre Perek Yud Aleph has 17 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph. Says that Rambam mitzvahs asay, there's a positive commandment in the Torah, lehisvado is lifnei Hashem, to make a declaration, even though literally the word lehisvadis means to make a confession, but as we'll see, you're confessing to doing the right thing. Normally confession is connected to doing the wrong thing, so he's worded in the English to make a declaration. After you removed from your property, kol hamatonai shebezerah haaretz. And as the Rambam will specify, this refers that you left the leket and the shikha and the peyam, and you separated and removed from your property the trumais. I'm saying that dafka in plural because it's not only truma gedola, but it's trumas ma'aser and all of the ma'asers. And that is what the Torah calls vidui ma'aser halacha beis. The aim is vadin vidui zem. This declaration is not made every year. It's made only twice throughout the 7-year Shemitah cycle. And when? After the year in which you have Ma'aser Ani. In other words, Ma'aser Ani is on the 3rd and on the 6th. The year after that is on the 4th and on the 7th. And as it says, Shenemar ki sechala la'ased, the Rambam doesn't write, you have over here the 3 dots, but the limud is from the words that you have later in that pasuk, Eis, and the emphasis is on the word kol ma'aser tvuascha. So all of the ma'asers doesn't only mean ma'aser sheni, it also means ma'aser ani. So yeah, it has to be after there was the possibility, the obligation of separating ma'aser ani, and then we amar to lifnei Hashem aleikecha. And again, as we'll see, the lifnei Hashem aleikecha is only lechatchila. It could be said anywhere. Bi'arti ha'kodesh min habayis, the word biur, as we know by chametz, by the machlekes tanoim. But here it means I removed, because make no mistake, when I just separate the trumas and the masras, the remaining is chulin misukanim. Even if I did not give it yet to the recipients, there's the hafrasha. But vidui ma'aser is that I didn't only do the hafrasha. It's not I can't eat. I ate, but you can eat and leave it in your home. That you removed it from your home. Halacha gimel. Wow. Mincha, now there's another reason why mincha on what we call on Achron Shal Pesach should be davened early, not only for Sudas Mashiach, because you have to have more time during those years to say the vidui. And what does that refer to? Beregel shekol hamaisres kolam boy, which is going to be, again, what grows on the 6th has to be given Ma'aser Ani. But it has to be after that, when there's no one is separating Ma'asers from the year that left, because you are already in the beginning of the following year. When is the beginning? When is springtime? Pesach. The Eina Pesach Megia Mishana Revius Elo called Peresh Lishas was already in this Asru. And this is both Peres Ilan, Bein Peres or it's Gavaldik. And don't forget that Rambam L'Shitosei again speaks about Peiros, because the Rambam holds L'Shitosei that biblical Maisres, biblical Trumais, isn't only from the 5 grains, or like most other Rishonim hold, and from Daga and from Tirosh and Yitzhak. No, the Rambam holds it's from everything that grows. Fakert. The Rambam has to speak out that vegetables is midrabanan. Okay, halacha dal. Ein misvaden elabayoin. So the Rambam wrote about mincha, but he writes you can do it during the day. Ubein bifnei abayis, bein shalifnei abayis chayer, Chayiv both levaer, to remove, and lihisvadois. Now again, we're going to see that when the Torah says lifnei Hashem Elokecha, so lechatchila, the mitzvah is to make that declaration bam mikdash. Anyways, all of the male Yidden have to be in the Beis Hamikdash for the regel. But if you didn't say it in the Beis Hamikdash, you fulfilled the mitzvah. Vido izeh halacha hey nemar b'chol lashon, because it says ve'omarta lifnei Hashem Elokecha, and ve'omarta means b'chol lashon she'ato omer. Chol echad v'echad omeroi b'fnei atzmai. Everyone should say it by themselves. But ve'im ratzu Rambam lizvadis ke'echad, and l'chu'ura, I mean, are they going to be using the lashon Rabbim? I don't know, but they're going to be saying it together. Then they can do it. Why is it vidui? That's the big question. So we spoke Shabbos about why is it called vidui. The nakuda is that when the dirt gets a stain and gets another stain, you want to clean it. After a point, when it's so dirty, you yourself say it's shena shmata. In other words, if a person is going to look at themselves that I'm a one big fat sinner, then if that is what vidui will do to a person, they're not going to use the vidui to get better. They're going to come to the conclusion that I'm anyways a sinner. So levaita, God forbid. Forget, vidui is based on the fact that I'm a good person. I'm a good yid. I have mistakes. I have things I have to correct, but it's worth it to make the effort. Halacha vav. U'mitzvasoi b'mikdash, here we go. Lachatchila shenemar v'marta lifnei Hashem Elokecha. However, v'mitzvada b'chol makom yotz. Halacha zay. Einoi mitzvada elo ad shelo yishor etzli echad min hamatonis. It's not about making the declaration. It's easy to say words. The declaration is that I was meva'eh, which means that you got to first do that which you are going to make a declaration that you did already. You have to remove from your house all of the matonis. Now, even though this declaration is made on Yom Tif, in Eretz Yisrael, it's on Shvi Shal Pesach. We call this Achron Shal Pesach. But removing it, in other words, giving it to whoever you have to give it, you're not doing that on Yom Tif. So this is done Erev, the last day of Chol HaMoed. The Erev Yom Tov for Achron, Choya HaBiur. There's a machlekes Rishonim over here. I mean, the Rambam holds clearly it has to do with the end of Pesach. You're going to read on other Rishonim, it has to do with Erev Pesach. But it's Pesach, you can say a general statement. Ulamachar Misvad. You do it Erev, done on the 6th day of Pesach, and you do the vidui on the final 7th day. Halacha Ketzar hu ois. What's pshat? Im nishar etzlei truma or trumas ma'aser. And again, you can have it in your house because you ate the produce because you separated it. Well, so you're good. You were misak in your tevel. But you don't have to give it to be allowed to eat your chulin. So you ate your chulin, you can still have it in your house. That you give to the kohen. The ma'aser edition you give to a Levi. It's interesting that the Rambam is saying that you don't give the Levi untithed ma'aser edition. In the beginning, the Rambam just says that you have the right to separate trumas ma'aser. Here he's saying it lachatchila, you should do it. It's not because it's the last second. We want to make sure that everyone gets it. It's not fair for you to give to the Levi ma'aser edition on the last day. Give it to him already, Misukana. And then in the year of Ma'aser Ani, we're saying this Ma'aser Ani because we're doing this after the 6th year. So what you have is going to be Ma'aser Ani. Give that to the Aniyim. Oh, here we go. Nisharu etzli peiris Ma'aser Sheni shel vadai. Now, what happens if you didn't get rid of the Ma'aser Sheni? Now it's not so simple because don't forget, Ma'aser Sheni produce has to be consumed. But it's too late. You can't do that. Or neta devoy, as we learned yesterday, or the money that you already used to be paid to them. So here, your mamish do a biur, like you do it on chametz. You have to destroy it because it cannot be in the world. You didn't use it prior, your loss. It cannot be. Get rid of it. And what does it mean? However, if nishlan etzli ma'aser sheni shel demai, which is only to begin with only a derabanan, you're not chayiv to be mevayir. Now, it doesn't mean that you can be noyig and that, God forbid, like cholah. No. Midrabanan, it's ma'aser sheni. Midrabanan, you have to consume it in Yerushalayim. But the obligation, the biblical obligation, cannot go on something that biblically is not obligated in. It cannot, it doesn't. Nisharat levikurim, also, anezem izbadim b'chol makom. All right. Even though you're supposed to bring it to the Beis Hamikdash, too late. Get rid of it wherever they are. Now, that what? That you're chayiv to be mevayed. Like we mentioned, but if you have something that you did something to it which is when you cook food, it no longer has a long lifespan. Not that it's going to get ruined one day. We all know this. Without refrigeration, you cook something, you already, it's almost like you are mavayed. It's edible now. It ain't going to be edible for a long time. Interestingly. And it's amazing. Even the wine will last a lot longer, correct? But it's not like a grain, l'mashal. Grain can last forever. Now there's yayin hamayusha, and then you have the yayin from the sheshis and mebereshis we're going to have in this Mashiach. But that's what halacha says over here. Wine and spices will spoil if they are left over for a significant amount of time. Halacha yud. I'm just thinking maybe wine. If you have good wine, wine is going to be consumed. Don't worry, no one is going to leave the wine. But that's not what the pshat over here is. And we already spoke, what does oinas hamaisros mean? It doesn't mean the same thing for everything. It can mean a third mature before you harvested it. It can mean, right, it can mean that when you plant it, it's going to regrow. But the Rambam generally uses the words hanata when it comes to peiros. Because they were not higiyah oinas hamaisros. Halacha yudal. And Yom Habiur, which is the last day of Chol Hamoed, according to the Rambam. So first of all, you physically cannot make the separation, and we already learned so many times that does not need to happen. You have to do Kriyas Shem. And we learned that you can take your container and say that the northern top is 4. That's good enough. And then you want to make sure that halachically it was gifted to the correct recipient. How do you do that? Here you have a challenge. So the Rambam is going to speak about now hilchos kinyanim. There are different mediums in which you can affect it. Number one, that means that if you have a kohen over here, or you have a Levi over here, just for example, and you have a piece of land, if the kohen or the Levi does a kinyan on your land, you can give him a mashu. So he's doing a kinyan. So, metaltalin can be nicknamed agav charka, and then you don't even need to do the kinyan on the metaltalin. The challenge here is today's the last day to do it. You can't make a kinyan on yontif, and it's far away from you. So that's one. These are hilchas kinyanim. So that will be one way in which you gave it to him. It's his. Oy, the concept of being bezaka something, I make a kinyan for you. Right? So therefore, bottom line is that you made sure that halachically the correct recipient owns it, and that you're good. Even though it's physically in your possession, it doesn't matter. You gave it halachically to the recipient. Because this is a great way of doing it. What may not be done, because even though chalipin is a way of making a kinyan, many times chalipin was not as a medium to making an exchange, which is actually what the word chalipin means. And we're not allowed to sell the matanas. We're not allowed to sell them. It looks like the coin is giving you something. And by the way, when you make a kinyan suda, you get it back. But it looks, the act of the kinyan was, you're trying to give me permission to sell your chametz. I'm going to give you my gartel. I'm going to give you my watch. You're going to lift it up. We are noyig. We don't even let go of it. I lift it up with you. But the real chalipin was, I gave you something of mine, and you're giving me something of yours, or permission to do something with yours. It looks like a mechira. And since don't make a kinyan that looks like a mechira. Point is that it doesn't bother me if physically the items are in my possession. Obviously, if it's here, give it. But if it's far away and I procrastinated, I left it for the last moment. Gift it halachically. It should belong now to the kohen, to the later, to the ani. No, because he can make a kinyan of karka without giving me anything. Very good. So he doesn't give me money. He makes a kinyan. He sticks a nail onto the ground. He does something to improve the ground. Halacha yud beis. Very good. Because it says in Parshas Kisavai, bi'arti hakodesh min habayis. And as the Rambam will go on to show you how every word in this pasuk is in reference to another one of these matanis. HaKodesh, which are called kodesh. Min habayis, that refers to chalam, shehi hamatana shel kohanim babayis. The sativ leviv beferish. That's my sedisha. Vigam extra michlal shekidomatu matana acheres, which is a truma gedoylam and trumas ma'aser. Lagay liyosum ve'almona is a ma'aser oni ve'leket shikropeya. And afapi she'ein lekedush shikropeya ma'akven es havidoim. Why is that? Because the Torah doesn't use the word nesina. By these three, the Torah uses the words aziva. Doesn't matter. So that's why it's not ma'akev. But really, again, the idea is that all of that, which you already separated anyways, kifi, the mitzvahs of the Torah, twice in 7 years, make sure it's given to the recipients, or the way the Torah, remove it from your property. Halacha Yud Gimel. But tzarech lahafresh es hamatonis ala seder. And only then do you have the right to say the vidui, which is making a declaration that what? Kechol mitzvahs chasher tzivisanim. Kechol mitzvahs doesn't only mean that I did it, but I did it the way you wanted me to do it, meaning in the right order. Ha, im higdem ma'aser sheni l'rishon, eni yachal isvadis. Another din. If nisraf tivloi eino yachal isvadis, sharei lo hitresh matanois l'nesaron levalein. So even though, again, we're speaking about biur, we're speaking about you removing it, but the kavana is for the recipient to get it. So if I had, God gifted me with wealth, and God forbid, everything got burnt. So it was mavuar, it was burnt. No, I didn't give it. Now, how long that went on for is a very interesting topic. But the nakuda is that when Ezra made that push to get the Yidden that lived in Babel to move to the Holy Land, right? And when he finished the building of the second Beis Hamikdash, there was, the Torah mentions a very little number, 40,000 to 40-some thousand, which is sad, that went with him. And what was even sadder is that not a single Levi went with him. So he said, since no Leviim were interested to move back to the Holy Land, that he penalized them, as we learned that since the Kohanim are also from the tribe of Levi, which means that if you give Ma'aser Rishon to a Kohen, you fulfilled your obligation, even though you're supposed to give it to a Levi. So he says that Ma'aser Rishon should not be given to Leviim. It should only be given to Kohanim for however much long it went. So during that period of time, no one was able to say Vidui. Because it says, Vigam Nesativ Levi. In other words, it wasn't that Ezra was saying that a Kohen is Tama Levi. No. The Kohen has a separate category. If you give Ma'aser Rishon to a Kohen, you fulfilled your obligation. He did. So he used that B'di'evet as a lechatchila for a knas. But that excluded our ability to do this mitzvah of saying the Vidu. Halacha Yud Daled. Now, since in the nusach of the Vidu, we say the words bi'arti, can bi'arti as a kodesh. Now, what from all of the separations is called kodesh? We will see ma'aser. So mi she'ein loy ela ma'aser sheni bulvad, and he's giving it now. Then misvad, because she'iker havidoi is b'ma'aserhu. Ve'im loy hoya loy ela bikurim bulvad, also misvad. Because the word kodesh specifically, amazing, as the Rambam wrote in Halacha Yud Beis, how do we know that the Torah is also demanding for me to give the truma? You would argue truma has kedusha, right? Truma can only be eaten by kohanim. Ma'aser Rishon is tam mamin halavim. Nevertheless, the truma is nichlal from the words v'gam nesatif. But the words kodesh is in reference to Ma'aser Sheni, and as we learned, Gadbulim nach Punterei, Hashgacha Pratis, and Bikurim. Okay. Even though, again, make sure that, towards the end of the Chalamayit Pesach, that's the last moment, give it to the Kohanim. But ein misvade she'ein hatruma to una vidoi ela bechlal shar matanois. Right? In other words, you're making a vidoi if it's included in the other gifts. But the ikur is for the kodesh. Halacha tezvav. When you're saying the pasuk le'avartim mitzvaysecha, what do you mean by that? It means not that the guy is declaring that I kept all of the Tayyag mitzvahs. It's hard to find a person that we all strive to do that, of course, but people have failings. Le'avartim mitzvaysecha is all in reference to the separation of the Trumas and Ma'aser, specifically, nor min atolosh ala mechubar v'lei mechubar ala atolosh, nor v'lei min achadosh ala yashon v'lei yashon ala chadosh. Then when you say v'lei shachachti, what did I do? If I did not violate your mitzvahs, I did your mitzvahs, what I didn't forget, it means shalei shachach v'levarchai ulahaskish mei all of a big machlokes. What the Rambam means, we'll go with those who say the Rambam is referring to Pashat Birchas HaMazon. And not what the other Rishonim say. If the Rambam meant I didn't forget to make the Birchas HaMitzvahs prior to separating, which we have to do, that cannot be the meaning, because Birchas HaMitzvahs is midrabanan. You can have a pasuk in the Torah that's referring to something that on a biblical level, you're not obligated to do. Leave it at that. When it says, I did not eat it while I was in Oinen, as we learned just recently, means, even though he did this part correct, he made sure that he took it out of his house and he gave it to the right recipients. But if he ate it, ba'aninus, he cannot say this declaration. You can't make a partial declaration. This is a vidoy that I'm a full tzaddik. Not that I did 99%. I did it all correct. Means, when it says, that Rambam already said it before. What does it even mean? I didn't give it to a mace. What would you think? How would you give food to a mace? So we already learned it means that with the money of my Sheni, I only use it for food or drink. And sicha is bechlal shasiya, but what not? I didn't do other mitzvahs with it. I didn't use that money to buy even an aron or a tachrichin, which is the greatest mitzvah that Rambam wrote before, even for a mace mitzvah. Even for a mace mitzvah. Very nice, not with my Sheni money. Or as I had a chmanas on them and I gave them what to eat. No, that's the pshat. I didn't give it lemes. What does that mean? I listened. What did God command me? Look how beautiful this is. Simcha. That means shesamach, and not only that I was samach, but v'simach boy. That means I shared the simcha with others. As it says, v'samachta b'chol ha'toiv. What's part of the mitzvah is that to rejoice in the giving, to rejoice in that which God tells you is for you. You take it and you eat it and you share it with others. And then halacha tazayin hashkifa mima'oin kochcha min hashamayim, and as etc. Kashid nishbata la'avisenu, to give us eretz zovas cholav u'devash. So what does that specific bracha refer to? Zubakosha sheyitin tam beperos. And as Chazal tell us that Mishacharav Beis Hamikdash, many things in the world changed. If you remember, right? The sky is not so blue. The people that are into the tchelis, they say that's why the tchelis doesn't look like today's Toyer Hashemayim, because the Toyer Hashemayim is not the way it should be. There's no more, right? The tam of the basar went into the bones. That whole go on. That there's no more tam apedas. No, there's certain things, the world, it should be that way. If God's home is destroyed, so why should the world be, I'll say, perfect? It's not perfect. So that we're asking specifically, we did a mitzvah with pedas, so now we have the right to ask that there should be a tam in the pedas. And the final halacha yud zayin, Yisrael, and even a person who's a mamzer. A mamzer is a yoresh, which means a mamzer owns land in Israel. So therefore, they could be misfadim. The point will all be that part of what you make in this the thank you part of the vidui is that for the land, as the Rambam is going to quote the pasuk. All right, so they own land. And now again, whoever's using here the Rambam, the Chayenu, there's a difficult. I have it says Kasha Nishbaita La'avoseinu. Kasha Nishbaita La'avoseinu doesn't prove anything about land. I know that there's another gears. I don't know what you have over there in the Rambam in the Moznaim, but the other people are goydas. It says there, the Eis Ha'adama Asher Nosatolanu, right? That's what you have over there. Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about Kana and Levim? Kana and Levim also misvadim, because Afal Pi Shaloi Cholku Ba'aretz Yesh Lahem Arei Migdosh. The Rambam doesn't even write that Kohanim also can get to stay achuzah. The Rambam doesn't have to write it. The fact that we have the 6 and on top of that the 42, which is really 48 cities, and those 48 cities. So when you speak about ownership, do they own it? They don't own it, but they own it. No, in other words, they're like an owner. So they can say the Eisu Adama Asher Nosatolanu. And therefore, you're a Klei Kodesh and you live in the Mashiach's building over here, even though it belongs to I don't know whom, it's yours. You can thank God for that. And Brich Rachmana Desayon, we are starting beautiful Hashgacha process. We're learning this on Tavshin Pei Gimel, and this is Mamash Erev Yom Kippur. So we're going to begin to learn about the Chav Dalid Matnas Kohuna. It's amazing that the Rambam in the first chapter, as we'll see, has 2 different approaches. How do we categorize them? Everyone has the same matanis. Question is how you number them. Which ones are considered in one group, and other sedarim where you separate those and you bunch together others. But we're going to begin by going through all of the Chavdalat Matnas Kohuna, and we're going to show how some of them are noyig only in the Holy Land, only in Yerushalayim. The Rambam is going to put in one group Bikurim, Chala, matanis, as we'll explain, matanis which you should give from every animal. Reishis hageiz, pidyon haben, and petach hamor. We'll explain what that means. And only these 5 from the 24 will be what the Rambam will be addressing in this series of Bikurim im Sha'ar Matnas Kohuna Shabbat. So let's begin with the intro, that this Yesh B'Chlolon Teisha mitzvahs, 9 of them are positive mitzvahs. Ba'achas mitzvahs loisasem, v'zeu pratim, aleph lahafresh Bikurim, ula ha'aloisan lamikdosh. Number 2, shelo yoichel ha'koin Bikurim chutz liYerushalayim. Number 3, that the owner that brings them should also read a declaration, as we'll see soon. Number 4, moving on to another of, like we mentioned, there's going to be Bikurim Chala, Matana Yisreishis Hageiz, Pidyon Haben, and Peter Chamoy. So Lahafresh Chala Lakoin. Number 5, Lasei Zroya, which is going to be the right forearm, the Lechoyayim, as well. The Lechoyayim means the jaw, but we'll see it's much more than you think. It's a real gift of meat. And the stomach called the keva to a kohen. According to all of the opinions, other than one sheet of Rabbi Zajac, it's noig not only bismai bias, shleibifnei bias, it's noig in chutz la'aretz. And you have throughout history certain gedolim that they would give it, which is very rare for this to happen. Everyone is looking for a heter. I know b'chutz la'aretz, today, even the frumsta people, they rely on one shita that holds. It's not noig b'chutz la'aretz, and even in Eretz Yisrael, it's very rare that this is gifted to the kohen. They find the legal halachic loopholes. Halacha vav, litin loy, to give to the kohen reishis hageiz, as we'll define what that means. But whenever you share your shepsalach, so the beginning of the sharings go to the kohen. Liftois b'char haben, the litin pidyon l'kohen. That's something that we are all familiar with. We call this pidyon haben. Halacha 8, liftois peter chamoy, and the litin pidyon l'kohen. This is also something that people do every now and occasion, even here in cities. Right? When did they had here? They had over here a petach hamor. I think it was like 15 years ago, and they make a big thing about it, which is beautiful. We got to make a big thing about mitzvahs. And number 9, la'arif petach hamor, to decapitate that firstborn donkey if you did not want to redeem it. Ubir mitzvahs elu will be in the following series of parakim, beginning with Perek Aleph. Again, Perek Aleph. Prior even to going into any single one of them, basically the Rambam is going to go through what we have in the Chumash Parshas Koirach after he made this whole irur on the kahuna. So not only did God deal with Koirach va'adasai, but Hashem reiterated, and all of the Chav Dalet Matnas kahuna are written there. The Rambam is going to write the 24, but again, interestingly, he's going to record 2 ways of being mesader the Chav Dalet Matnas. Let's begin with Perek Aleph has 16 halachas. Halacha Arba ve'esrem matanis kahuna were given by Hashem, by the Oivishter, to the Kahana. And all of them are explicitly spelled out in Batoida, which is in Parshas Koirach. And Va'al Kulam, it's not only that given, there was a bris, it's a covenant. Nichmas of this la'ara. The whole coin she'ena moide bohen. When we learned this in the Gemara, there's a whole different ways of teaching the words moide bohen. But on any level, however you'll teach it, he doesn't acknowledge them. Many people today, sadly, they're not comfortable to assume the emes that Ata b'chartona mikol amen. Just begin with that. No, everyone is equal. No, the Yidman, we're not equal. We're chosen. And the same thing, the Kohanim, they were chosen by God. And God gave them certain, if they don't acknowledge that, then they lose that right. And therefore, don't be, I'll be, the matana cannot be given to them. Halacha beis. And not all of them have kedusha. But if there is kedusha, then aside of the birchas hanehenen, you got to make a birchas hamitzvos. Mevarich asher kedishanu b'kedushasei shel Aharon v'tzivanu le'echol kach v'kach. Halacha gimel. Now, first way that we're mesader the 24, the Rambam said it. Halacha gimel. Shmoina matanas, man, from the 24, 8 of them, ein oichlen oisam hakohanim ela b'mikdash, and we're lifnei mechoymes hazot. 5 of the 24. Another 5 matanas. Ein zoichin behen min ha'Torah ela be'eretz Yisrael bilvad. V'chamesh matana zoichin behen bein ba'aretz bein b'chutz la'aretz. We're going to go through the numbers. That's 23. And the final one, matana achas, you are zoicha from the Beis Hamikdash, not to be eaten there. It's something that the temple's property is gifting to the Kohanim. And now let's go. Al Haseder. This is the Rambam say that Allah Dalid The first 8 of the 24 that may only be eaten in the Beis Hamikdash. Number 1, Psar Chatos. Guys, a lot of these we'll explain when we go through the right place. Number 2, I'm sorry, that's all number 1. Psar Chatos. Echad Chatos Oiv, Echad Chatos Abehim. Number 2, the Basar of an Asham. Here again, whether it's an Asham Talui or an Asham Vadai, as we'll explain when we learn Karbanis. Number 3, Zivchei Shalmei Tzibur, which is, as we'll see, the only shlamim of a tzibur, my friends, is the karbanis that are brought on Shavuos with the shtei halachim. We're going to go through this when we learn kachim. Number 4, umaysar ha'omer. It's a communal carbon, but unlike menachos of kahanim that all have to be burnt, it's like private menachos. Only a kmitza is burnt, and the rest is given to the kahanim. And taka number 5, b'shiyari minchas, that's brought by Yisrael. Number 6, the shtei halachim, which is offered on Shavuos. Number 7, the weekly lechem upon him. And the final one, the loik shemen of mitzvah, as we'll see, that is gifted to the kohanim. And elu einacholim ela b'mikdash, because they have the status of kodesh. Number halacha 5, uma hein hachamish einacholim ela b'Yerushalayim. So guys, 18 and 5, that means now when we're gonna go through these, we'll be up to the 13 from the 24. Number 1, the chazah and the shoik of the shlamim. And like all kachei kalim, just like the owners are allowed to eat whatever is given back to the owners anywhere in Yerushalayim and HaKodesh. So the chazeh and the shoik that's given to the kohanim from the korban is also in the category of kachei kalim, and therefore it could be eaten anywhere in Yerushalayim. Now there's other nafkaminas. The other nafkamina will be, is it only lezichrei kahuna? The Rambam will write about that soon. So the rule normally is that something that is kachei kachim can only be eaten by zichrei kahuna, by the males, by the men, and anything that may be eaten in Yerushalayim can be eaten both, as we'll see, to the zacharim and the nekevos. Number 2, hamura min ha'toida. There's a part that's removed, separated from the toida, that gifted to a kohen. A toida is really a subcategory in the shlamim, which is kachei kalim, which is why it may be eaten anywhere in Yerushalayim. I know it's not exactly like the shlamim. L'mashal, shlamim can be eaten for 2 days and 1 night. Toida dafka has to be eaten for 1 day and 1 night. And that is, by the way, the source of making a su'udas hoida from the carbon toida, because one of the reason God wanted it that way, but what we see from the carbon toida is that since you have the 40 loaves of bread, 4 of them are given to the kohanim. 4 different types, 10 of each. But the other 36 belongs to the owner. And it's 1 day and 1 night. Now you go eat 36 loaves of bread. You can't. It's a Thanksgiving for which you're chayiv to invite a lot of people. And since you also give some of it to the kohanim, that's why when you make a suda sidor, you have to have 2 chachamim representing the kohanim. The third is hamuram eil nazir. The whole bittul b'shishim, if you remember, came from the eil nazir. And that's only, those chalakim that you give is only from an eil nazir, as we'll learn. Number 4, even though nowadays you also have to give it to a kohen, but you can't bring it as a carbon. But when there was a Beis Hamikdash, it was given, it was a carbon, it's kachei kalim, which means after he did the shechita, he can eat it anywhere in Yerushalayim. And the 5th one, which will be actually the first of the series, will be bikurim. And elu einacholam ela Yerushalayim. So we have 8, and we have 5, so we went to 13. Halacha vav. Let's go weiter. We're going to have another 5. So we're going to have 13 and 5, my friends, is 80. Number 1, truma. Number 2, trumas meiser. Number 3, challah. The Rambam in this Seder is putting each one separately. And these 3 are also referred to as kodesh, meaning that it's not only gifted to the kohen. If you are a non-kohen, you may not partake of it. Number 4, the first of the sharings, as we'll explain. And number 5, stei achuzah. We already learned stei achuzah. Because if I was magdish my stei achuzah, and I was not koyde it, and then the year of Yovel came, then it goes out to the kohanim la'achuzas oilam mamish, so to the kohanim that are serving then in that mission. Now, elu ein zoichem b'em en atoyde ela b'eretz Yisrael, and the ein oichlem trumas v'chal shel eretz Yisrael ela b'eretz Yisrael. So even though there is a truma, let's say in the Rabbanan, right? But as we learned, you're not allowed to be matama truma. Anything that is biblically obligated, which means it's chalas Eretz Yisrael, may not be taken out of Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so now we're up to 18. So now Allah Zayin. Now we're going to add another 5. That's going to give us to 23. So as we will learn, the zroya, the lechoyayim, and the keva, which are three parts that have a lot of value from any kosher domesticated animal, has to be gifted to Kohanim. And it has nothing to do with the Beis HaMikdash, has nothing to do with Eretz Yisrael. And these they're called matanis, just to know. We call them matanis. We don't call them zroya, lechayim, and keva. So one. Number two, pidyon haben, that we're familiar with. Number three, petach hamor. Number four, gezel hager. Now, if someone stole property from a ger, and then the ger passed away, and the person who wants to return the money to the ger, we're speaking about a ger who doesn't have any halachic heirs, that is where the Torah writes that the heir of the ger is God. You order to God. Who is the representative of God? The kohen. And number five, if you gift something to kohanim using the words chedem, as we learned not long ago, chedem kohan, chamishtan chulen lechol davar. It's a gift. It belongs to the kohen, but there's no kedusha in it. So the money, for example, that you give as pidyon haben, as we do today, the kohen can use it for himself. The kohen can give it to you. The kohen, whatever. There's no holiness there. So now we're up to 23. Now the eighth one, halacha 8, which is the 24th, v'hamatana shezoichin ba min hamikdash. We're speaking about something that God gives directly. Something belongs to the mikdash, and the mikdash is the one that's gifting it. Those are the hides of. He's beginning with oilers, and really all of the kachi kachim karbanis. Kachi kachim means it belongs to God. So the hides are gifted to the kehanim, kol kehanim. Says the Rambam halacha 9. You should know that Hashmoina Matana She'ena Chalam Elam HaMikdash, they are all in the category of Kachim Kachim. And therefore, it goes together with that, some laws of Kachim now, Ve'enam Nechalam Ela L'zichrei Kohana, to male Kohanim. As we will learn, but we're going to learn these then. Ubehem Nemar, Kol Zachar, Yoichal Oisoi, to tell you only males and not females. Halacha Yud, Hachamish Yerushalayim, the other 5 that could be eaten even in Yerushalayim, it can also be eaten in Dazar, but even in Yerushalayim, Hein Kachei Kalim. And therefore, by default, that remember these klalim, benachalim l'scharim ulvilan and kefis. Ubahem nemar l'chon nisatim ulav explicitly, right in Parshas Koydech ulav noisecha. In other words, it's males and females. Itcha chakayla. Now, afa pisha ein otanim ela lazichrei kahuna. Right, was you don't give it straight to the nekevas. You give it to the males because you give it to the kohanim that are doing the service in the temple. The service in the temple may only be done by males, but once they receive it, they can share it. You have to be a kohenes. Kachem kalim may not be eaten by non-kohanim, but it doesn't have to be eaten only by the male gender kohanim. Even it's Kohen's wife, Kohen's daughter, someone else's daughter. She becomes, so we learned that before. Kohen is ma'achol. Very good. Habachor, makriven. Huh? Also? Sure. Avadim kanan, not evidently. There was a kinyan kaspoy. No. Habachor, makriven, chelboy v'domay.
Same like Shuman.
Yes. The ein makriv elo ish. But here again, in other words, the point he's making is that who's bringing it a man? And then the carbon, whatever was not burnt, is given to the one who brought the carbon, to a zachar. But when he receives it, it's kachikalim. Now he can give it to his family members, not to any kohenes that he wants. The gezel again. But especially these, right? That the Rambam writes are chulin l'chol davar. Chulin means that this kohen now can give it to a non-kohen. Doesn't matter. But it's given through the males. You cannot do a pidyon haben with a female kohenes. It has to be done l'zichrei kohen, even though the money is chulin. Because shekei nemar boy v'nosato hakesev li'aharon uvanov, excluding his daughters. Upetech hamoy also has to be done l'zichrei kohuna. Shedina b'choyres kolam shavam, that it's done with zecharim and not with nekevos. But here again, Peter Chamoy, the Rambam writes, is chulin. Chulin means once the kohen received it, he can give it to a non-kohen. Not only to a kohenes, but the ceremony has to be done. The mitzvah has to be done. L'zichrei kohuna. Says the Rambam Malachi Yudal Afini Lamadota Shahamatonois Shenitonim Linekevos Kazecharim, that it could be straight given, lachatchila given to a woman not she can eat many more of them, is only 5. Truma smaiser, chala, the matonois behema, again, that for some reason we're not that noy yet, right? There's roya, the lochayim, and the keva, and the reisha, that can be given straight, even male and female gender here will be the same. Umenayin ani yomer shadeshus agays could be given lachatchila even to a kohenes, because since it says reishus digon chatirosh chavi yitzorecha, so the Torah juxtaposes the giving of truma, and in the same pasuk it says reishus geis soin chatitan loy, just like we established that reishus dagon, which is what we call truma, may be given equally linakavois like to the zacharim. In the same pasuk, we have Reishus Hagez. That's the source that you can give it lachatchila to a kohenes. Now, the Rambam writes from here until the end of the chapter that we're not adding, we're not subtracting, we're having the same 24. The Rambam wants you to know halacha yud beis that manu chachamim matanos elu al derech acheres. There are other chachamim that subcategorize that were mesader the 24 in a different way. Va'amru, this is the way they remembered it. They put it in their minds. 10 of them in the Mikdash, 4 in Yerushalayim, and 4 Bagvulim. And let, huh? Yeah, 10, 4, and 10, 10, and 4. 24. Let's go. Guys, Chatas Behema here, unlike the Rambam say that whoever has a chart, they have to start making charts for the Rambam. The Rambam put together Chatas Behema and Chatas Oif. Here he separates them. Just count. If not, you're not going to get the 10. And whatever the Rambam separates here, then we'll put other things together. Just a different way of being Masadir. Chatas Oif is 1. Chatas Behema 1. Chatas Oif 2. Asham, amazing. Just like the Rambam, at least. Asham means Asham Vadai. And Asham Tali. That's 4. Again, before in the Rambam, that was the word the Rambam put together, both Ashams. Anyway, Zivchei Shalom Tzibur is 5. The Loik Shem and Shalom Tzveit is 6. Shtei Alechem is 7. Lechem upon him is 8. Shiyari Menachis. Okay, here the Rambam doesn't put Shiyari Oimer, if you remember. You know, it's Shiyari Menachis. No, I take that back. Shiyari Menachis from commoners and Umaysara Oimer. That's 10. Now, Halacha Yudalid. The 4 that are 4 of Yerushalayim. Number 1, Bechar. Now, why does he put Bechar over there? Just to make it clear, guys, I'm chayv to give my Bechar from anywhere. But since when it's not blemished, it must be taken as a korban, and it is in the category of kachikalan, which means he'll eat it anywhere in Yerushalayim. Bikurim also, as we'll learn in the next chapter, Bikurim is brought to the Beis Hamikdash. But after you brought it and you did the kriya, then when the kohen receives it, it's kachikalan. He eats it anywhere in Yerushalayim. Hamuram mitoida, and here the Rambam puts together, and that which is separated from the El Nazir. And the Oiris HaKachim, that's number 4. In other words, Muram mitoida of El Nazir is 3. Oiris HaKachim is 4. It's not that which God gives you, that which people give you. It's all that's the 4 that's connected to Yerushalayim. Now, why does he put that in Yerushalayim? So here's the problem.
The last one?
Yeah, the problem is that the oiras that are sold, if you read over here in footnote 7, the kohen can take the money and use it for anything. It's chulin. Chulin is not bound to Yerushalayim. It means that when he gets those hides, he must keep them in the holy city.
Even after they were redeemed?
No, he writes second about them. They would sell them and use the proceeds to partake of food that was eaten in that holy city. The Radva says, Taka, that's what he means over here. And now, halacha tesvav, again, we're going into the alternative seder, that there are 10 gifts that are categorized, the 10 gifts that are anywhere. Big Woolen. Number 1, Truma. Number 2, Trumas Meiser. Number 3, Chala. Number 4, Reishis Hagez. Number 5, the Matonis. Number 6, Pidin Aben. Number 7, Pidin Petach Hamoir. Number 8, Stei Charamim. You understand? You're gifting it to the Kohen. I get it. It's the Kohen that's serving that in the Mishmar. But where is that field? Anywhere. You verstehst? Number 9, Stei Achuza. And the Gezel again says that Rambam Ulafi Cheshman says, Choshav Kol Hamuram Mikachim Kal Matana Achas, like we mentioned, then Allah Yudalad, we put together the Muram Mitoida and the Muram from the El Nazir. And what are they? The Chazah and the Shoik, which is Bechlal gifted from every Zavach Hashlanim. And it's all in the same category of the unique breads that are separated from the Torah, which is you connected to every carbon Torah, and in the Zroya, the special gift of the Zroya, which is separated from the Eol Nazir. Im Halechem, a Torah has 40 loaves, and a Nazir brings 20 loaves. We'll learn all these dinner. And from those 20 loaves, you separate and you give it to the Kohen. Im Halechem Amuram Ima, with the Chaz and the Shoy. Now, what gives us the right to put it all together? The Rambam says that he agrees. It makes sense. Since all of them are from a Shlamim, even though they have different rules and they have different time expirations, doesn't matter. Chashuv, Hamura Mehem, Matona Achas. Now, guys, when we're putting all this together to compensate, like we mentioned, this Seder separates the Chatas Veva, Chatas Oiv, the Asham Vadin, the Asham Toloi. The Rambam, obviously, there has to be halachic reasons why we have to know halachically how do we organize it. But when the Rambam is going to go into this final halach of this Pedek, the Rambam is going back to his Seder. Okay? And he made us say that there was a concept of 5. So, Kol Hamatonos that are connected to Karbanos, the Rambam is not going to write in this series. That he'll leave for when he speaks about those Karbanos. This word called Achas vi Achas Mehem b'Mekoyim b'Hilchos HaKarbanos. And similarly, the Gezel Hager, since it's connected to the laws of theft and doing tshuva and giving back what you stole, that the Rambam is going to write in Hilchas Gezel. The Rambam already, by this point, the Rambam wants us to learn Al Seder the way the Rebbe writes. That unlike Chumash Rashi, Dafke here, you cannot, or Shas Bechal, you can learn one Masechta before the other. Most people begin learning Masechtas Bava Metzia. You can begin with Pedek Sheni, not a problem. In Rambam, you cannot learn a ladder without learning the Pri. You cannot do that. You won't know the halacha. It's good to learn. That's why the whole Indian of learning the whole Rambam Allah Seder. Here, the Rambam already says, I already explained the din of Stei Achuzim. The Rambam already explained the din of Charamim and Ilchas Harachim. The Rambam already, we just now learned the din of Truma and Trumas Ma'aser and Ilchas HaTruma. So hold on. So what will be explained in this series? Ubahalachis elu evoid mishbetei hamatonos that are not connected in Karbanos. And what are they? Bikurim, these 5. Chala, Matonois, not these 5. Amreshus Hageis, Pidin Aben, and Petach HaMoreh. The Rambam is writing the different Sidorim to understand where the Rambam is coming from. Why is he only going to be addressing these and not the others? He's not going to be addressing all of the Chav Dalad Matnis Korner, like he mentioned. For example, that which is connected to Korbanis, that he'll leave to the Korbanis. Connected to Gezela, Trumas O'Maisers, he made a special series. So this is almost like an intro as in explaining why he's doing what he's doing. So from these, Bikurim, Chala, Matonas, Reishis Hageis, Pidin Aben, or Petach HaMoreh, the Rambam is going to follow this order. So now we're learning today's 3rd chapter. Pedig Beis is going to be the Pedig about Bikurim. And we're going to begin learning that Bikurim, number 1, can only come from the Shivas Hamid. We're going to go through what they are. It can only be gifted from the superior of the Shivas Haminim Gufa, as we'll see in a moment. You must own land for you to fulfill the mitzvah fully of Bikurim. We're going to have some details, like if you have a Asheda tree, and that's connected to Hilchas Avodas Kechavim that we already learned. And one of the big ironic differences between a Avodah Zarah that belongs to a Yid, God forbid, or belongs to a Goy, also God forbid, is that a Goy has the ability to be Mevatel Avodah Zarah, a Jew does not. So even if that shaded tree belonged to a Goy, and therefore halachically he did the right thing, he was Mevatel it, nevertheless, none of the products that grow out of this shaded tree may ever be brought for Bikurim. We're going to have these dinim and the Spedic, and finally, we're going to learn how much do you have to separate. Very much like Peah, very much like Truma, Midoiraisa, the first. Midrabanan, there is a minimum shir, and that will be like Peah, Echad, Shishim, and the Rambam in this chapter is going to go pasha through how it's done. We're going to learn the basics of Bikurim in this, now only 2nd chapter. Pedig Beis has 21 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph. Says the Rambam, mitzvahs asay lohavi Bikurim lamikdash. The mitzvah is before how you separate, that we'll learn in this chapter later. But when you have the Bikurim, you have to bring it to the Holy Temple. And therefore, ve'ena Bikurim lehagin ella bifnei habayis, from produce that grew in the Holy Land, as it says, reishes Bikurei admascha. Admascha doesn't mean that you own it here in LA. Admascha means the land that God gave you in the Holy Land. That is what Tavi Beis Hashem Elokecha. You have a pasuk that's mamish the same, both in the Shpatim. The same pasuk you have also in Kisis. That's the pasuk that ends with the words Loisavashal Gili B'Chalei V'Imor. So everyone is familiar with the seif of the pasuk that it's written 3 times. The beginning of the pasuk is also written 3 times. The pasuk begins, Reishis B'Kuri Yad Mascha Tali Beis Hashem Lekach. Loisavashal Gili B'Chalei V'Imor. Now, Umeviim Bikurim Midvireyim. However, on a rabbinic level, produce that grows, both from Ari Sichan and Oig, conquered by Moshe, even though, like the Rambam says, it was conquered with everyone. But since anything that was conquered prior to the full conquest of Eretz Shivas Amamin, the Rambam Paskins is in the category of Kibush Yochid. And Surya, David HaMelech, but he conquered Surya prior to him capturing and conquering and settling the whole land, the whole biblical land. Now, why are you chayiv? Because Shakoina beSurya, Shakoina beYerushalayim midrabanan. Avo, Amoinu moivim Mitzrayim ubavo. Midoraisa, it's only from Eretz Yisrael. Midrabanan, he's writing, it's also from the lands that conquered by Moshe and the lands that were conquered by David. Now, when it comes to Trumas U'Maises, more lands are chayiv midrabanan. Yachayiv from Amoin, from Moya, from Mitzrayim. Yeah, he says here, even though they are chayiv b'truma u'maisles midivreim, nevertheless, you don't even on a rabbinic level have to bring from what grows there. Furthermore, if you said, I'll be machmer, it's garnished. If they are not bikurim. Halacha beis. Even from the produce of the Holy Land, it's not any product. It's only from shivas haminim ha'amurim b'shvach ha'aretz. Means when the Torah is praising Eretz Yisrael, the Torah specifies 7 types of products that they were unique in the Holy Land, and they are in this order: chitin, wheat, the barley, anavim, grapes, te'enim, figs, rimonim, pomegranates, zaysim, olives, and tamarim, and dates, which will include also basically the date honey, right? Eretz zavas cholav udvash. They were speaking about dvash tomorrow. That's only the im hevi chutz mishivas haminim loinis kacher. You have a beautiful orange orchard over there in Kfar Chabad. Very nice, good for you. You don't bring bikurim. You can't. It doesn't work. Even from these 7 species, there's something unique about bikurim that it must be min hamufchar. Dates that grow in the mountains are not as sweet or not as good. Nor from the other fruits. What other fruits? Pomegranates, the other fruits of the pasuk, the olives that grow in the amakim, that grow in the valleys. That's not min hamufchar. Elo, you must bring mitvanim sheba'amakim u'mipeirai shebaharim, because they are min hamufchar. Now, the im heiti shaloi min hamufchar, like kayin, kigoyin, tamarim shebaharim. It's giving examples. Te'enei suchais. What happens is, that's what happens when you what's called the stuff you put on so insects should not get it. Pesticides. That's te'enim suchais. Already then they would smear the te'enim for bugs not to eat it. The downside of all of these products is that it makes the fruit itself of inferior quality. Like today, it fills it up with poison. Nor if they began to rot. You can't bring it's inferior. Same thing, dusty grapes, smoke. I think smoked grapes also. Why would they smoke it? They would smoke it to kill the worms. So you're dealing with the pesticides. You have that advantage. The disadvantage is that it makes the product itself not so good.
Here it says the reason they oiled it was to speed up the process.
Okay, he said that they oiled it to speed up the process, but the smoking was to get rid of the pesticides. When you have to balance everything out. But that's normally life. When you do something, you help here and you ruin it there. Best thing is to do nothing. Like the
medications.
Like eating food, while eating. I don't know if there's more good or more bad on the food. Point that Rambam is trying to make is it's not a din of lechatchila. It's amazing. It's a din of ma'akev. Not only the shivas haminim, but from the shivas haminim, you have to bring it min hamufchar. And if you brought it from a species of these 7 that's not min hamufchar, it didn't do anything. Halacha dalet. Ein miviim bikurim mashkin. Other than zeisem and anodin. Bilvad. Because the Torah says the words pri. What does Chazal say? Pri means v'loy mashkin. Maybe mashkin. And if you brought mashkin, that means you had rimoinim. Wow, you made the most delicious pomegranate juice. Sometimes the Rambam writes the words loy niskachu. Here they write the words ein mekablim imenu. There's a difference, or there's a different emphasis. Maybe it means not only is it loy neskachu, but we don't even want for the kahanim to take it because the kahanim on the base of I'll take your pomegranate juice. No, don't take it from them. And maybe before loy neskachu means the kahanim take it, maybe. But they tell the guy, I want you to know you are not yours. But thank you. Here it's like even more. Halacha 5. Hakrevim liYerushalayim meviim te'enim anovam lachem. Because even though they have a shorter shelf life, since you are so near, by the time you do it, by the time the kahanim get, it's still going to be fresh. But once you live rechaykim, however that's defined, then you should bring dried figs.
Why not bring it less ripe, and then by the time you get there, it's ripe?
Because you have to separate it when it is min hamufchar. You can't bring a green banana. I know you can't bring bananas. I'm saying a moshe. It doesn't make sense. You have to bring a min hamufchar. A green esrog. As long as this year you get an esrog that is only partially to fleck, you're already good. This year is if you saw the esrog, they blame it all on the Shemitah. Halacha because by Shemitah you can't properly guard the product. But they charge double. Halacha oh, this is very important. Bikurim cannot be brought before Atzeres because it says regarding what we call Shavuos, the Chag HaKotzid, the Torah calls it Bikurim Masech. And more, that's your non-ripe David. Narvos then. I tell you, here doesn't mean that it's not it's good. No product is ripe from the outset. So you have to wait, and then wait until Yom Tov, wait until Atzeres, and then gift it. And part of gifting it, this is, as we'll see, there's something that has to be read when you are giving it to the Kohanim. V'yikra leim. V'chein ein neviim after Chanukah. Because shahabikurim shebikru achar Chanukah, even though there are certain products, that tree, that fruit only got ripe very late. So what? They are already considered from the next year. And therefore you have to wait until next year at Atzeres. And if the fruit has a short shelf life, so dry it. That's what he said. From these two products, you have grapes and you have, what were the two products that he says? And figs, regettes. Maybe dates also. Halacha zayin. Now how do you determine the year? When does the year change? Since we're speaking about peiros, I know that I'm by Tfuah, but by peiros it's Chamisha Asar B'Shvat. Lo yovi mi peiros shechantu. That's the oinas hamasas. Chanota means budding. Peiros that began to bud prior to Chamisha Asar B'Shvat, they cannot be the bikurim for peiros that budded after, or vice versa. Al peiros shechantu acha Chamisha Asar B'Shvat. And by the way, that has nothing to do with trees that you planted or trees that grew by themselves. Shenemar and Parshas Koirach bikure kol asher ba'arzam halacha ches peiros shel shutfim chayavim bebikurim, because the Torah says bikure kol asher ba'arzam. This is a plural expression. Halacha 9 hagadol ba'atzitz. Amazing, something that grows in a pot, even though the pot is perforated. And when it comes to many other halachas, we consider that which is planted in a perforated pot as if it's planted in the ground, not for bikurim. Similarly, if something is growing on a boat, we just learned before, I think it was in Ochas Trumas, that if you have a boat and the boat is made out of wood, which is a porous material, and it's very near the bottom of the seabed, again, I think there is a psashir of 10 tefachim, as you can think, and something is growing in the earth, in the boat. For other dinim, it's getting nourishment from the land, not for bikurim. Because the Torah speaks about ba'artzam. However, ba'artzam doesn't have to mean only in the ground. So, for example, if something is growing on the roof, that's called on the ground, because the house is mechubar lakarka. If something is growing in a churba, so it's growing babayis, but no one is living there. That's also called enough. Ba'artzam. Halacha 10. Let's go. You plant a tree in your field. But you did this extension type of technique. In other words, you took the edge of a branch and you reinserted it in the ground, but you put it into your neighbor's property, or you put it into Reshus Harabim. With the opposite. And the havrach was done in your field. Or that the base is in your field. The hivrichai kitsasoi betoich sadeyu, And you also made the havracha in your field. So what's the vart? The vart is that between the ikar, between the base and the other edge that you put down, there is a derech. Doesn't matter whether it's derech harab, derech hayachid, but the derech, either a derech that lachatchila is made for the public, or even if it is a private derech, but it's not field uninterrupted. It's field with a path in between it. Understand? So over the path, you have this beautiful arch. Be'emsa means between the ikir of the tree and the side that you extended and planted into the ground. In all of these cases, because it says admascha ad sheyu kol hagidulim mei admascha. Halacha yud alef. What happens if nasan loy chaveru reshus? L'havre b'toich shaloi afilu l'shah. L'shah doesn't mean ashah. Shah means, for a couple of years. We're speaking about planting trees. So now, when you have reshus, it's considered yours. If a tree is near your fellow's field, even if it is within 4 amas. Now we're going to learn in Hilchos Shchenim. Even I know that the Goyim took many of these laws from us. You can't build all the way to your property line. You have to leave a certain amount of space, whether it is for air, whether it is for for sunlight. The Yeshua who conquered the land stipulated when he gave us the land. There's the famous 10 conditions, 10 tanoim. This is not one of the 10. People ask, why didn't we add this or make it into 11? But this is one of the tanoim that Yeshua made, that we should have the right to plant all of our land all the way up to the boundary. And even though it means that for some dinim, that my produce is going to be yoinik from your field, since I have the right to do it, it's called my land, admascha. So if my tree was near the meitzah, or noita, it's leaning, it's leaning over my steichavere. Even though I'm chayiv to separate it as far as Hilchos Shchenim is concerned, so it's not always okay, but nevertheless, it's considered mine. That if it's planted so close to the boundary, even when I have to make a tikkun mitzad Hilchos Shchenim, but it's still considered mine enough from which I should be chayv to bring bikurim.
If you extended it into your neighbors, who makes the
no one, unless I got permission to do so. Then I do it. That's what we learn. If I had reshus for him to do it. Halacha yud beis. Now, how do we view an artist? An artist is someone, a sharecropper who gives 1% from what grows. Choiched is someone who gives a fixed amount. So sometimes if he does a great crop, he'll benefit. If he does a small crop, he'll lose. But he's giving from the product. Who owns that? Or, Baal Yisroyim. People that force sales. They pay for it, but they don't pay the right market value. Or outright gazlanim. All of these people, they don't really own the land. And even if the owners gave up hope, because the Torah says, what happens if I own the tree, but I don't own the land? So if I only own one tree, I have the right to have my tree there. I have the rights, obviously, for the tree to get nourishment from your property. But if I don't own the land, I may not bring from that tree. However, if I bought 3 trees, and of course we're going to learn elsewhere, they have to be within a certain proximity, one of the other, then yesh loy karka, as far as bikurim is concerned, even if the seller told me, I'm selling you these 3 trees, I'm not selling you the land in between them. But since I own 3 trees, halachically, it's as if I own the land. But all of this is if I don't own the land. But if I bought 1 tree and the land, you know what the naftamina is? What's the difference, Tom, if I buy a tree and the land? When I buy a tree, I want to make sure that even if this tree gets ruined, if this tree dries out, I should have the right to replant another tree. So when I buy a tree and the land, I have such rights, and then I bring bikurim. Halacha yudal. Halakeyach peiros telushin. If I buy fruit that was already harvested, velokach hakarka, and I buy the land upon which that fruit grew. I didn't own it when it was growing off the land. Now I don't only own those remaining, I own the orchard, I own the land. So harei ze maybe bikurim. Because harei yesh lo karka upeiroi seha. It's not about me owning land in my backyard. Now, if I own now the land from which these fruits came, it doesn't matter that I didn't own it when it was growing. If a person sold the fruits and he said, I'm selling you only the fruits. Even if I sold you the fruits, you, Reuven, when the fruits were connected, doesn't matter. Reuven never owned the land of these fruits. Why not? Because he doesn't own the fruits. And the lekeach in a maybe. Sherein lekarka. Chazar hamoicher v'lokach haperes min halekeach. Since the Rambam said in Halacha Yudalid that to bring bikurim, you don't have to own it while it was growing. You only have to bring it if you own now the fruits and the land from which it grew. So if this is what happened, if you bought back the peiros, harei ze maybe. Sharei yesh lekarka upeiros seha. Halacha tezvav. And then I buy it back from the goy. Because the level of ownership that a goy has in the land is not strong enough for it to remove the sanctity of the land, right? And there is no removal of the mitzvahs being in a goy, as we explained regarding trumais, etc. Halacha tezai. Ashedo, a tree that was planted to be worshipped as an idol, even if it was done by a goy, and while under the ownership of a goy, the goy nullified the status of this tree, which is something that's possible, as we learned all the way in the beginning in Hilchos Avodah Zarah. Nevertheless, since it was once a tree designated as a deity, which shares the same rule. Halacha Yud Zayin. How much bikurim do you have to separate? The first fruits. What does the first fruits mean? Like payah. 1/60th. Now, if you want to make all of your field bikurim, you can make it. Unlike payah. By payah, we learned that you have to leave something for yourself, because if you give it all, you can't call that an edge. An edge means it's from something else. Bikurim, you can claim that it's all bikurim. How great is that? Your whole day can be bikurim. Halacha yudches. Hifresh bikurim. If you already separated your bikurim and you want to add to it. Itra means when you bring a basket, you want to make your basket beautiful. The way you make your basket beautiful is not by putting some nice material. It's by adding fruits. So you're adding from your fruits more to be ma'ater the basket. So it's not like, for example, we said by Truma that once you separated your approximate 2%, you can't add to it. You did it already. By bikurim, you can separate bikurim, and then decide later you want to separate more bikurim, and that will have a din of bikurim. When you bring bikurim from Eretz Yisrael, it means it's biblical bikurim. Which the Rambam called before Eretz Sichon v'Oik, or if you bring it from Syria, from which midrabanan you bring bikurim, there we don't paskin that the Tosefes bikurim is like bikurim. But even there, it can only be eaten betara. When you want to make your basket look beautiful, it's not only that you will crown it with more product, but it can only be from Mishivas Haminim. And now the Rambam begins, Halacha Yutes, how exactly do you do it? Says the Rambam, that you go into your field. And when you see a fig that is getting ready, and by the way, figs are not all ready at the same time. It's a tree that you constantly need to harvest it. Or eshkol anavim shebikru. You see a cluster of grapes. This one is budding. Bikru means it's budding, not that it's fully ripe. Or if you see a rimain that has budded, shebiked. So here, koishrin bigemi, you take a reed and any siman is okay. Now that we have stickers, now that we have synthetics, now that we have rubber bands, just as good. Gemi is just a practical, that's what they use. They use a piece of grass. Choshna begemi, to remember which one is it. Now it's easy to notice it because now it might be the only one that budded. It's the bikurim, it's the first. But tomorrow in a week, there'll be another 1,000 buds. So you tie it to remember, and you say, Hadei Eil Bikurim. Now here's the word. From when you verbalize its designation, which is called Kriya Shem, even though they're not even ready. And we learned before that if you don't bring a ready product as Bikurim, they don't accept it from you, or it's not Bikudeshes, it doesn't matter. As far as the designation part is concerned, the Kriya Shem, while it's Mechumer, is fully effective. Now, when they ripen, now you're going to reap it. That's it. Your part of designating is fully done at this earlier stage. But if you did not designate them as you should have while they are still attached, you went ahead and you harvested your field, you harvested your trees. Doesn't mean that you are exempt. So now, what happens? So the din is, what will you have to do? That's no problem, guys. If I have pomegranates, right, it's min b'minoi, I can separate it from another batch. As long as it is not, like we learned before, not min ha'chadash ala yashan, min ha'yashan ala chadash. But if I have to separate it betara, and we don't say it's like mina chiyuv ala ptur, which by Maisras you may not. No, here, even though you may not separate it min ha'tamei, you are allowed to separate it min ha'toid. What's separating it? You have to have the 60th. So that's how you have the 60th. You're going to put all of your produce together. You will include in your cheshbon both pure and impure, and a 60th of that min ha'toid is separated for it all. All you have is Tommy Dikapedos. Here, all he says that Rambam, even though it's not clearly written, because what will happen? There's nothing you can do with Bikurim when it's Tommy. Because another unlike Truma, at least the Kohen can benefit from that product as fuel, whether it is to warm up, whether it is to cook, not by Bikurim. Why? Because they are like Kachay Migdash. Okay, halacha chaf. What happens if you separated Bikurim? The issue was not Tum and Tara, but Vinomakum. They got there, they rotted. Oy Nivzazu. They were stolen by others, or they got lost. They were plundered by others, they were gambit by others, or now they became Tamei. So you can argue, I already did mine. If I did mine, I was yoitza. I can't bring it to the Beis Hamikdash. It's not my fault. No, we don't say that. You are chayiv to be mafresh others tachteim. Another gavaldik thing. So it's not only it's not just that you're chayiv and achrayis. It's just like we learned that you can be ma'ater yepedes with more bikurim. And if it's coming from the Holy Land, it's bikurim. So even though it's not the first that bought it, it doesn't matter. You can constantly add to the bikurim. So now be mafresh again. No, it's your obligation. It's not just to make the separation. Your obligation is to actually bring it until when you reach that point, you have to make sure that you do it properly. Final halacha, chaf aleph, hamafrish bikurav laha'aloisen biyodei l'Yerushalayim. Lo yishalchem biyad shliach. I want to say one thing, but we're going to learn soon. Dinam tomorrow, Yom Kippur. We have to make sure to learn. But the mitzvah of reading whatever has to be read may not be done by a shliach. So that's why when you made that separation, don't send it in the hand of a shliach. If you separated it for you to bring it, but so then, but even in such a case, guys, you have to know from the outset that the mitzvah in its fullness, which is with the kriya, cannot be done. A shliach can never do the kriya. And it's better for you to do it with the kriya. But if, a person is ill, at least that part of the mitzvah, which is it should be brought and gifted to the krihanim, that will be good if it was done so with that intent. Guys, to be continued.
What time tomorrow, Rabbi? Are you guys studying tomorrow?
So, if we're starting tomorrow, I don't see how we're gonna learn 4:00.
So in the break we'll learn basically.
That's the idea. We'll learn the break. I don't mind having people. Listen, we'll play it by ear. 4:00 depends how people feel also. If I'll feel okay, I don't mind learning right away from, if we finish davening at 3, I don't mind learning from 3 until 10 to 5. Kevin, I put on the thing at 5, at 4 o'clock, I'm sorry.
I'm a little confused by this whole.
Why are you guys so clear?
It's too much
Thank you,
stuff.